Hello and welcome to the Celtic Huddle podcast. I'm Mark Wilson. Today I'm joined by the Celtic legend Simon Donnelly. We're also joined by former Celtic star, ex-teammate of mine, Stephen Pearson. Peter won 2 league titles, 2 Scottish Cups and the League Cup in his 3 years at Parkhead. Derek McGregor from the Scottish Sun will also be joining us as he's been close to all the major stories at Parkhead this season. On today's podcast, we'll discuss Sunday's game against Rangers and the Guard of Honour, if it's going to happen. We'll analyse the appetite from Celtic fans to buy season tickets at this minute and whether or not the club should have a Player of the Year awards this season. We'll also have a wee bit of fun at the end, Sid, on how Celtic managers and captains dealt with players who were late. This in the back of Mikel Arteta dropping Pierre Aubameyang for Arsenal at the weekend. So stay with us for the next 45 minutes and hear some of the guys' stories on that. And also get your comments in and questions into us. We'll put as many as we can to Simon and Stephen Pearson. We want to hear from you, as always, the Celtic fans, especially at this time. I'm delighted to say once again the podcast is now sponsored by First Star Legends Gin, First Class Transfers and Social Recluse. We thank them all for their support. So let's get to it. No time to waste. Celtic v Rangers on Sunday. And Stephen Pearson, bring him in now. Piero, thanks for joining us, mate. How are you?
How you doing, Mark? You okay, mate?
All good, mate, all good. Now, we'll start with the Celtic v Rangers game on Sunday. Guys, we've all played in games against Rangers. First of all, tell us how you felt, Piero, building up to these games. Demand for tickets, more edge in training the week leading up to it. Just a full experience. How good are these to play in, Piero?
Oh, they're top class, mate. There's no... I've said it before over the years, there's no better feeling, than the build-up to an Old Firm derby. As you say, the expectation, the build-up, the fans, just the bragging rights potentially at the end of it. There's no better feeling than the build-up to a game because, you know how important it is to so many people. And being brought up Celtic fans myself, it resonates with my friends, my family, everybody. And if you don't get the right result, it's a long week for everybody else going back to work. So you're under all sorts of pressure. But they're the best games to play in, mate. And the atmosphere is incredible.
Well, what was your first one, Piero?
You there, brother?
Aye. What was your first Rangers game?
I can't really hear you, mate. It's breaking up.
Oh, no. Sid, what about you? And then, while Piero sorts his connection out, memories, feeling, training leading up to it.
Same as what Stephen's saying there. It's the game that you look for as soon as the fixtures come out. The build up is incredible. You're talking about tickets there. I just remember back, that was a real pain in the backside.
Horrendous,
trying to get tickets for it. Everybody and anybody wanted a ticket, and everybody assumes you've got 30 or 40 up your sleeve. But a great game to be involved in, and the bragging rights, everything that goes about these games, it's the games that stick in your mind after your career at Celtic finish. Rangers games are something special.
Well, I was lucky. I played in the season where we played Rangers 7 times in one season. A few big ones there. Again, fortunate enough, the first game I played in against Rangers at Ibrox, we won, and we went on to win the title pretty early that season. So
over the 7 games, what was it? Did you
over the 7 games? Oh, jeez, somebody would probably know better than me, but it was we lost the cup final that year, so that was particularly a sore one. But the season that at my first season, we won the league pretty early on, and we still had a Rangers game to play at Celtic Park. And I tell you, although the league was wrapped up, and it may have been somewhere around the 14, 15 points ahead, it still meant the exact same. It turned out a 0-0, a boring 0-0 game. Piero, you might have been involved in that game. If you remember, at Celtic Park. But, I mean, what was your first game, Piero? Do you remember? Does it stand out? I think Piero's got us on mute. Can you hear us now, Piero?
No, I can hear you, mate, but it just keeps, I can't, it cuts out and it just keeps, crackling.
It keeps crackling. Right, if we can get a better connection for you, might be able to...
I've came out and tried to rejoin it again, but it seems to do... I can hear you now, mate, so...
Right, can hear us now. But memories of your first one, your best one you played in?
I was thinking back to that earlier, mate. I think it might have been off the back of the UEFA Cup where we'd just knocked Barcelona out, mate. We came back on the Sunday and we went to Ibrox and we beat them 2-1. And I think just with the week that we'd had in terms of knocking Barcelona out, I can remember there were beach balls everywhere, mate, on the Sunday.
That's right. Aye, that one. I remember that.
I should have scored, mate. Tomo ended up finishing the rebound, but I think that game just, the week that we had getting, knocking Barcelona out and then coming back and winning at Ibrox, it was just, it topped off a brilliant week.
Yeah, hard to beat that.
I like how he just nonchalantly says knocking out Barca there.
I know. Not many can say that, can they? I mean, Piero, any games that you went into playing against a Rangers side that were better than you, or you thought were better? Did you fear any time going into play Rangers, or should the Celtic players this week fear going into play Rangers with the year that Rangers have had? They're obviously unbeaten. Is there anything that springs to mind you in that period?
I think personally, like the games we were playing, couldn't afford to go into the game with any fear. Well, do you know what I mean? You couldn't show that because it would show in your performance. So I think, the teams I played in and you did over the years were lucky the players we had around us. So you always knew that you get good players around you. So you were never ever scared. Obviously the outcome, yes, because, the backlash that comes with losing an Old Firm game. But looking ahead to this week's game, I don't see any reason why Celtic should be scared or afraid. We've got good players, albeit this season, it hasn't worked out for them. But I think over the course of, the period that they've been so successful, that doesn't just drift away over the course of a period of time. So there is still good players there. So they need to believe that on Sunday they've got good enough quality to go and do the job.
Yeah. Sid, going back to yours, well, first of all, favourite win against Rangers, do you remember?
5-1 game.
5-1.
5-1 at Celtic Park. Lubo's first game. He got a double. Got to remember, I went through a period at the club where we were on the receiving end of a few defeats against Rangers. So
well, I was going to lead me into the next question when I says about Piero, if he went into facing Rangers teams where he was scared, and he quite rightly so. The period we were at the club, it was always pretty nip and tuck, but you went through that period where it was...
We were up against, and by the way, it was a good Rangers team. It was, and even when Tommy came back to the club and we were bringing in some players of quality, there was a lot of games there that you would... Similar to the last Celtic Rangers game, Celtic dominating large parts of the game, and then you would have Laudrup breaking away, or McCoy's popping up with a goal, or Gascoigne. And that was the pattern over 2 or 3 seasons. So it was when that kind of turned and we started getting some good results. The 5-1 sticks in my mind.
I remember that game fondly myself. Sid, brilliant game. Man.
Aye, it was a great game to be part of, and I think you could, because of all the hurt before. There was a lot of boys with experienced defeat after defeat. But going back a wee bit before that, there was a 3-0 at Hampden that I was involved in, and again it was effectively a dead rubber because Rangers had won the title. But just like what you're saying there, if you watch it back and the way we celebrate the goals and the win, it wasn't a dead rubber to us.
No.
So I think these games take care of themselves, and there's a lot. I mean, one of the lads on the comments there says about stopping Rangers winning run. So I mean, there's loads of incentives there. It's a Celtic Rangers game, so there's loads of incentives there for the team.
Well, no, you're totally right about that. I mean, I played in, I said that 0-0 one where the league was done in our favour. I played in the one where Neil had just got the job on an interim basis and Rangers had won the league, or were, en route to win the league when Tony Mowbray left, and it was a night game at Celtic Park. There was no lack of passion or fire, because you take the games in isolation.
Aye, of course.
And I remember going into that game just thinking, all right, we've had a horrendous season. It was so poor, but there's a game here to let Rangers know that we're not going to be as bad as that next year. Yeah. Trust us. And we went in and we won the game, and it made all the difference. The atmosphere in the dressing room after that, for having such a poor season, was incredible. It just lifted us, and I think that's what the Celtic players have got to look for on Sunday. Piero, Celtic, can you believe this? Haven't they beaten Rangers in 16 months? The League Cup final in December 2019 was the last time. So what are you thinking? You touched on it earlier. Can they win this one? They've got the quality certainly still in their squad, have they not?
Yeah, I think there's no reason why they can't win the game Sunday. As you say, it's hard to believe that there has been that such a period of time where Celtic haven't won, considering the domination they've had over the years. So I think though, looking at the players we've got, I think for John Kennedy as well, it's a big opportunity for him to stake a claim in terms of how he can galvanise the team. And, it's a big game for John as well as it is for the players and for everybody. And as you say, Celtic need to go and put a marker down and say, as you say, well, this season it's not been great. It's been far from it. But as you say, we're not going to be as bad as this next season, and we're going to be back. And this is an opportunity to put that right on Sunday.
Yeah, well, it's 3 defeats on the bounce. Can you believe that? Said after the period of dominance that Celtic have had under Brendan Rodgers and, stretching years back, it just seems it's hard to believe.
It's incredible. I covered one of the games. The game Celtic won the league for the 8. Was it 5-0? And it was 5-0 after an hour.
Yeah,
it could have been 10. And it's incredible now to see how it's flipped. But I'm agreeing with Piero in terms players. You've still got quality there. You've still got quality, and it's about self-pride. Going, professionalism. Go out there and give the Celtic fans something to smile about on Sunday. And beat them.
Piero, you know John well, and obviously Mick well, who's assisting him just now. Any exclusives you can get us about how the team's going to line up? But I only ask because it'll be interesting. When Celtic went to Ibrox back in January, they went with a diamond in midfield. They played one of their better games of the season, gave Rangers real problems that game. Of course, didn't get anything out of it. But I just wonder, if it's up to you, what would you stick with the diamond against Rangers and hope that period of kind of dominance with possession, you can actually turn it into goals, or would you change the system to match Rangers?
No, I think Celtic probably need to stick with what they're best at. Obviously, when you play the diamond, obviously the full-backs are the outlet for Rangers, and they've obviously been big performers for them this season in terms of creating goals and assists. And, so when you play the diamond, I think that's one thing that, the outlet's always the full-backs, because you're obviously quite narrow. But I think with the players that Celtic have got in terms of, getting in those pockets and playing through the lines, they've certainly got the quality to hurt Rangers in that way. So I don't think Celtic should match Rangers up. I think they should go with what they think is their best team and go and put a marker down on Sunday.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Listen, the big talking point, it's turned into, these things can turn into a wee bit of a farce sometimes, but Brendan Rodgers has been asked a question about the Guard of Honour, and he's gave an answer. He said that Celtic should give Rangers a Guard of Honour. Guys, what do we think, Sid?
Not for me. No.
Not for you.
No.
No.
I mean, the Guard of Honour, I mean, is this a new thing? I know there was talk about it a couple of seasons ago with Celtic, but no, not for me. Rangers have won the league. They deserve to win the league. But at the weekend, you show them the respect and go out and try and beat them.
Piero, I mean, Brendan Rodgers said that Celtic should be humble and be a top sporting team by giving the Guard of Honour. What's your opinion?
No, I'm the same as Sid, mate. I don't think there's any need for a Guard of Honour, mate. Look, I'm not big on that thing anyway, regardless of who's potentially receiving a Guard of Honour and who isn't. They've been great this season, hats off to them, but I think a Guard of Honour's a step too far, mate, anyway. Yeah,
well, comment here, Francie Dubel, this Guard of Honour is just nonsense. How many did Rangers give in the last 9 seasons? When was it? A couple of seasons ago? Was it Ibrox?
I think it was.
And Rangers refused that. Of course, what made it interesting was Neil said, if it was the other way around, he would have done it. So it's quite interesting that Neil's not there. But listen, I don't think it will happen. I'm with you guys. Brendan Rodgers, it's probably easier saying it just now when he's sitting at Leicester and not at the club than if he was at the club. So that remains to be seen. But look, let's move on. Season tickets. So it's getting to the time of year when 50,000 season ticket holders will be asked to part with their hard-earned cash. Guys, are the fans in the mood to shell out £500 and possibly more at this stage. Peter, what do you think when there's so much uncertainty at the club just now? If you were a paying fan, you had your renewal letter in, you didn't know what was round the corner, would you be digging in £500 and taking a ticket just now?
I'd certainly have my reservations, Will, in terms of everything that's going ahead. I think the fans are looking for a bit of clarity and a bit of structure as to where the club's moving forward. I think if the Celtic board can get that structure in place, then the fans will obviously know that this is where the club are planning to move forward. So they might be more reluctant to obviously spend their cash and cash in on their season tickets, because they know where the club are trying to move forward. I think at the minute they're looking for some answers, and I think it's important that the board and the club, decide on a structure and whatever it is they want to do, whether it's a sporting director, a director of football, working alongside a head coach. I don't know how they see things, but I think they need to get that structure right, because there obviously is going to be a bit of change in terms of Peter moving on and one or two others. So it is important that they get that structure and that philosophy right as to where they're moving forward. And again, fans will buy into that, as I'm sure, they want to come back in their thousands and support the team, but they need something to support and something to cheer.
Yeah, well, Peter Rooney here makes a comment here. Folk will renew if they can afford it. Everyone is desperate to get back to the football and have some social interaction. I am all in anyway. Can't wait to get back. So there will be fans. I can understand that for Peter Rooney. There will be fans who say, look, desperate to get to a game. I don't care what's round the corner. But like Piero says there'll be fans, Sid, who will be still sitting. I mean, a number of weeks have passed. We've done a number of podcasts without any sort of word or clarification from the club. If you're banking on people putting their hands in their pockets, there will be people who will say, listen, not for me, not until I know what's happening.
I think it's a risky game. If you don't announce something and give the fans something there to get their teeth into in terms of, buying season books. I think I can see, is it Peter? I can see his point there. Of course, there's going to be people itching to get back out and get to the football. We all are. But I know fans, personally, that will not do anything until they know what direction the club's going in. So it's mixed, but I would like something to materialise over the next week or so. We're sitting here discussing this before the show. I wish something would happen, so that we can look to it, get excited about it and move forward.
Yeah. Paul Eady just mentioned there, the club have to announce new structure and manager before the renewals are out. So he's pretty certain on that. Michael McKenna, rumours that the director of football is already in and believed to be Harkin, and the first team coach in his choice would make sense to get Enzo Maresca. I'd be happy with that. Let's bring in Derek McGregor now. Derek, Scottish Sun, thanks very much for joining us yet again. Listen, you on this point, has there been a bit of a disconnect between the Celtic boardroom and the fans this season? Is this highlighting it even more, how quiet things have been? Or do you think we're going to get some big announcement to coincide with this renewal letters that are getting put out?
Hello, Mark, Simon, Stephen. I think in terms of a disconnect, I think that's beyond doubt. I think given the whole nature of the season, it's been a catastrophic season in so many ways, and I think the feelings of the Celtic fans have been, I think, as extreme as they've been for quite some time. And there's no doubt that I think communication with the fans, certainly could have been a whole lot better. And of course, right now, the fans are kind of holding their breath as to what the announcement is going to be in terms of the structure for the future, director of football, new manager in particular. I think clearly with every day, with every week that passes, the pressure on the board to make some kind of decisive move on either key position increases, it intensifies. I would certainly I think at the moment I'm not aware. I don't get a sense that there is an imminent announcement on either. I think at the moment there's still kind of careful, discreet diligence going on at the moment, doing background work, sounding people out. But I think as we approach the end of the month and certainly the start of April, I think there's going to be, I think, a real need for the club to make some kind of detailed announcement.
Yeah, I mean, Christopher O'Rourke here says can't justify £500 for a glorified Celtic TV subscription, and I guess that is a point. Derek, do you think there's anything in this Fergal Harkin thing? I mean, noises keep repeatedly coming up that's been agreed and he's going to be there. Have you heard anything on that front?
No, I haven't. I mean, I think, I think undoubtedly he is going to be on the shortlist. And I think he's someone who's had a kind of a good, close relationship with the board over the years. He's got a marketing background as well with Nike. And clearly the relationship with Manchester City has been very profitable in terms of the players coming up to Parkhead. So I think undoubtedly he has to be a strong candidate.
Yeah. Oh, listen, plenty of comments coming in here. Harry Houdini says anybody but Roy Keane. Shugster is saying Keane, Lambert, and Director of Football Martin O'Neill would equal the dream team. Piero, what do you make of that? I mean, all these names been bandied about. I mean, you were at the club with Roy Keane. You were also at the club with Paul Lambert.
Yeah,
you would have caught him, would you have, as well? So you know these guys. Martin O'Neill, of course. Signed Jay. You know these guys better than anybody. Would that be a good option?
Well, I don't see why not. As you say, well, there's names popping up everywhere. So there's going to be speculation left, right, and centre. I think it would be. It certainly would be a popular appointment. I think, you know, in terms of the history these guys have had with the club. They know the club inside out. Do they want to go back to that, or do they want to go on a fresher approach, something a bit more youthful, a bit more dynamic? Somebody like Eddie Howe perhaps would be somebody that, you know, I've looked at his philosophy, style of football, you know, his ideas. He's probably somebody new and kind of fresh and young and that sort of, you know, with experience, albeit having been in the Premier League. So I look at Eddie Howe as somebody that if I was, you know, looking at, I'd certainly be looking at him in a lot more detail than one or two others, certainly.
Why would that not be done now, though, Piero? If it was Eddie Howe, let's say, you know, it is Eddie Howe coming in. Why would Eddie Howe not be in place right now if it was going to be him?
Well, I think there's obviously not been any announcements made, and there's been no clarity on anything, which is obviously what the Celtic supporters are looking for. I think they're obviously, you know, the board realise it's a big appointment, you know, and they need to get it right. So they're probably taking their time, but at the same time, you would think if it was done, then it would be around. So it's obviously not done, but you know they're obviously looking at different options. But I think it's a big appointment that Celtic need to get right this season. You know, just so that they can, you know, hit the restart button and go again. Yeah.
See, the thing about Eddie Howe, and we've mentioned him on here now for 3-4 weeks, and he's been the front runner. His name won't go away, but I'm tempted to move a wee bit away from him just for that point. If it was. Is it really that complicated to get that done within this period?
Well, he's one that's out of work, so it could be if he was the one that was the first choice, you would imagine. I mean, what's the hurdle?
Yeah,
you know, to appoint him. So that would be the question mark over that particular appointment.
Guys, I think if I may. Sorry, Simon. I was just going to say. I think the dynamic of it. I don't doubt that Eddie Howe is very intrigued by the Celtic job, but I think you also have to factor in the fact that I think Eddie is also keeping an eye on a number of Premier League positions down south. I think primarily Crystal Palace, and I think possibly that's maybe a reason why he's not prepared to totally commit to Celtic. If indeed he has been approached or sounded out, and that's obviously his.
But on that, Derek, then is that Derek? On that, you may be totally right, and I have thought that myself. Should Celtic just be stronger and move on? Have we not learned from the past that Celtic hanging about for people, and you know, of course, Fraser Forster was one that has been well documented that Celtic wanted to sign him, but it kept getting put back and held off, and before you knew it, you've left yourself in trouble. Surely Celtic have to say to Eddie Howe, do you want the job? Yes or no? If it's no, I'm keep my eye down south, then let's move on.
100% right, Mark. I mean, I think Celtic are entitled to take the position that they're a massive club, and if there's a hesitation with a potential candidate, then I think, they would have a right to think, well, that's not what we need. We believe this is a top job. We instinctively expect people to be not only excited, but ready to jump at the chance. And I think, I think Dermot Desmond, I think famously has looked in the past a number of candidates direct in the eye and actually made a decision there and then. He's gone with a gut instinct. So I think if there's any hesitation in Eddie Howe's part, if I were part of the Celtic board, that would put me off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Kieran Nolan here, hope the board think big, worth investing in a quality manager that can improve the current squad and get quality over quantity in the market. Now, there's a couple of comments. I mean, Martin Bickett at the top there, keen, no way. He's wrote in capital letters. That's when you know he's serious, Sid, when he writes it in capitals. But look, is Roy Keane really that much a bad choice? I've heard a lot of Celtic fans, Sid, say, not for me, wouldn't touch him, purely because he's quite controversial. He's been at the game for 10 years now. But he went to Sunderland, huge expectations. Sunderland's a big club. Won the championship, incredibly hard league to win. Piero, you know all about the championship. Piero scored the 90 million quid goal that got Derby out there. But I mean, he did a good job there, albeit his second season wasn't great, but was in an incredibly tough league. Roy Keane with a young up-and-coming coach beside him, would that tick boxes? Or is it as bad a appointment as some Celtic fans are thinking?
It would for me. I would like to play for somebody like Roy Keane, stature, experience in the game. I think it would excite, and I know it is a mixed response to the likes of a Roy Keane, but Celtic winning with Roy Keane at the helm, I think the fans would get right behind him. As I say, people say old school, the way he goes about it, but for me, he's a winner. He's a winner. He's proved that in his career as a player. He's got huge experience in the game. That would excite me.
Piero, what do you think? You were a teammate of Roy Keane's at Celtic. Interesting character, to say the least. What did you think of him when you played alongside him, and what's your thoughts on being a potential manager at the club?
Well, for a player's point of view, he was top class, mate. He was only there 6 months, but just the way he came into the place, he had an aura about him. He wasn't. I think it was obviously towards the end of his career at that point, and I think he'd mellowed slightly from his days.
If that was him mellowed, then I wouldn't like to see him.
That was him, mate. More relaxed than what he has been, I believe. So I thought he was top class, mate. Just the way he handled himself, the ability that he had, the way he delved into working with the younger players, myself at the time. Regards to an appointment, it would probably be a very popular opinion, or an appointment with a lot of Celtic supporters based on what Sid said there. His record as a player, he's a winner, he's a Celtic man, so to speak. So it would tick a lot of the boxes, but whether the club feel that they want to go down that route or not is another question, and that's something that the board will need to answer. But certainly for a supporter's point, it would be a popular choice, I would say.
It would be box office. Press conferences alone would be box office. DMAC here, though, can we please get away from the Celtic connection, romantic nonsense, and get ourselves a proper coaching team, recruitment, scouting, etc., etc. So, look, the fans are divided on it's got to be somebody at Celtic connection, and people are saying, let's move on. But, Derek, it'd be great for you, would it not? Having Steven Gerrard and Roy Keane, in press conferences every week.
Get Keane up here just now, Matt. Fantastic. I mean, listen, I think we've discussed
make your job easier.
From a media perspective, it's absolute gold. And
just make sure your phone's on silent, Derek. You don't want that staring out when the phone goes.
I don't know if misquote would be a good idea, to be fair. Not that it's a good idea to misquote anyone, to be fair, but. I think from our point of view, it'd be fantastic. But I think, as I've said to you before, Mark, I just think the thing with Roy Keane, I think there's too much baggage that comes with it. I think there'd be too much controversy. I think he would be I think before long, my reading of it would be he'd be fighting with the authorities, he'd be fighting with the referees. There'd no doubt be bust-ups with players. And, you know, I don't know if Celtic need that right now. I think they need a more considered manager. And I think in the current climate, the pandemic climate, we've got no fans. I think there's even more emphasis on good man management. I think it has to be somebody, I think, with a kind of calmer temperament, a more considered temperament.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be some challenge, Derek, in terms of repairing the damage of this season with the club and appointing a new manager, somebody that pleases the majority, which is going to be difficult because all the names in the betting list, you can find faults with them all. But what about the challenge then that faces Don Mackay? Is this the biggest challenge that he's got to get right first and foremost? Or is he making the decision actually just now?
I think that's a hell of a question, Mark. I mean, because I think you can't believe that the Celtic board will leave it until July the 1st when Dominic Mackay officially starts. You can't believe they'll wait until then to be decisive in either director of football or manager. In fairness, let's not be naive about it. There's clearly going to be kind of back channel conversations with Dominic Mackay at the moment. They're going to be briefing him. They're going to be keeping him up to date with whatever they're thinking. But you know, to all intents and purposes, this looks like two decisions that could be made before he actually arrives. Will he be given a kind of a proper say in it? Who knows? I mean, they're also going to be two appointments that are going to be so key to his success as chief executive.
Yeah.
So the whole dynamic of it at the moment, Mark, is just utterly intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember anything like remotely like this where decisions have to be made, but I think the Celtic fans don't even know who's making the decisions, and Derek rightly touches on it there. Don Mackay's success as a chief exec is going to be based on the guys who are managing the club. So, look, interesting few weeks ahead in this one. Let's move it on a bit. Player of the Year. We says we're going to chat about that. Now, contentious. If you have such a bad season, Sid, should your club still have a Player of the Year awards?
It's a tricky one. I don't think there's any real need for anything this year. I mean, people can't even go to any sort of kind of awards as such. You know, it's going to be on a Zoom call, I'd imagine, if there was some sort of thing. Certainly didn't have... I don't remember having that when I was at Celtic, you know, Player of the Year things at the
Through the 90s, no.
No, I don't. You obviously had your sports writers and the big awards. But this season, after the way it's went, I don't know.
Piero, if you were David Turnbull, would you be gutted by Sid's suggestion not to have a Player of the Year?
Say that again, sorry.
He's surely got to be I says, would you be gutted if you were David Turnbull not having a Player of the Year? Because surely he is a front runner. Surely. I mean, yes, I can see Sid's point. It's been such a bad season. Why bother? But surely then you should maybe recognise success. Turnbull has been outstanding this season. No doubt in my mind that he would probably pick up the player.
He's been the top performer, right?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So should you recognise players who have played to a good standard, even though there's loads that haven't?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Well, there has been, you know, a couple of good performances over the course of the season. You mentioned David Turnbull, played with David at Motherwell, outstanding technical ability. Obviously, when he had that injury and the first move fell through, you know, you were never sure whether he was going to come again, but he did. Fought his way into the Celtic side, and he's been a massive plus this season, the way he's played. He's taken a lot of responsibility on his shoulders at quite a young age, and he's been able to handle that. So I think for him, certainly he would do, if there was to be a Player of the Year, he would certainly be giving it to David Turnbull, I would assume. What
about in the bigger scope of things? Scotland squad, would you add Turnbull to the Scotland squad? Take him to the Euros? Has he done enough?
I think so. Yeah, I think if you look at that, the way he's performed in big games for Celtic. He's probably done enough for me where he should be in that squad. He's had a consistency about his game, and he's added goals and assists. So, you know, he's certainly one that if I was Steve Clarke, I would certainly be looking to take with us.
Yeah, Jamie Hendry tweets in, baffled why Turnbull isn't in the Scotland squad, but listen, I certainly see he would. Derek, what's your opinion on the Old Player of the Year? Should you only have them when your club does well, or
No.
should you rightly be celebrating players who've chipped in and put their shoulder to the wheel?
Yeah, I still think you should go ahead with it. Certainly, if there was a title of Flop Player of the Year, it would be seriously contested. But no,
who would be your title for Flop Player of the Year? Who would win that?
I think it has to come down to between Barkas and Ajeti. You know, and I think you also have to
I know which one I'm picking.
The transfer fees for each.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
there's a few in the running for that.
Yeah, there's no question. But I do think, on principle, you should still go ahead with it. And I think, as you're discussing David Turnbull, I think it says it all for the impact that David Turnbull's made, that you're only really considering Turnbull's performances from kind of mid-December onwards. I think when he came into the team against Leo, he really has quickly established himself. The only other contender I can see, Mark, is Edward, and purely and simply because he's got 20 plus goals. But clearly we've been debating his attitude all through the season, but he still has scored 20 plus goals. But I think Turnbull would be the clear winner.
Yeah. Nicholas McCall here said.
Games, you know.
Nicholas McCall says Chris Ayer for Player of the Year.
He's did okay. Chris Ayers did all right. I wouldn't put him ahead of Turnbull. I think, as Derek said there, I think it's a reflection on Celtic's season that we're talking about a lad that came into the team around about the turn of the year, November, December time. And again, with Derek there, is taken to the role with ease and looks to be their most creative player, most threatening player going forward. And I'm surprised that he's not had a wee taste of the Scotland squad. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets in there. I appreciate maybe Scotland, that's maybe the strongest part of our team, midfield, but he's showed in the time he's been in the Celtic team that he's good enough. Yeah,
Chris Fraser agrees. David Turnbull all day long. Christopher O'Rourke at the bottom, more contenders for Flop of the Year and Player of the Year. That's evident with the way some Celtic fans are feeling this year. Right, on to our last point then. We finish with a wee bit of fun. Latecomers and fines. So Arteta dropped Aubameyang. You would have seen it for the Spurs game. A huge game, of course, and he's his top man, but he was strong. He decided to drop him because he was late for a team meeting. Apparently a repeat offender, by all accounts. Right decision, Sid, to drop your top man for being late?
It's a bold one, but again, as manager, if it's been repeated, you know, there's nobody bigger than the team, and captain or top man or whatever, you know, if you're not going by the rules, it's obviously came to this at the weekend. A huge call for Arteta because North London derby, but they get the result, so it gives the likes of Aubameyang some food for thought, you know, that the team have coped without him.
Yeah.
And hopefully he toes the line.
If it backfires,
aye, of course. That's why it's been a big one. But I think it's a right move. Nobody's bigger than the team.
Piero, yourself, you ever been late for a team meeting, a game, something along those lines?
I was always on time, mate. I was always on time. There's always one or two, mate, that you know, show up late for meetings and stuff like that. But I think back in
who was the most prominent? Who was a standout for you? Mate, never once Piero was that late ever. I remember Gordon Strachan taking us upstairs at Celtic Park, and we had a team meeting, and I was saying, he said, I can't remember, was it Arthur? Arthur was late again, maybe, and he went through everybody, and I got a name check for being one of the ones that were always on time, so I was pretty pleased with that. But anyone else?
You were son of Gordon, weren't you?
So, not really, mate, because he dropped me more times than anything. I remember here, do you remember Arthur in Milan after the AC Milan game where he was late the next morning? Because I think
Arthur was probably the one, mate, that was a serial offender, wasn't he? But you know, Arthur was Arthur. He was a big character, and he was a big performer for Celtic as well. I think that's the thing. So as Sid alludes to there, Aubameyang, he's club captain, big player. So it is a brave call, but luckily for them, they got a result. And I think a manager, looking back, Willow, I had a bit of fear in terms of the managers that I worked under. So I was always one that first thing in my mind was, I can't be late for training, can't be late for a meeting, got to be on time. So I was always on that mindset. And then you've got some people that just kind of stroll in and whatever, it's just a mindset, I think.
Aye, listen, I found it weird when boys were late. Guys like Samaras and stuff like that would cut it 1 minute before the bus would leave, and I just couldn't live with that anxiety.
It's fear, it's stressful. I said to you before we came on here, I regularly dreamt, or maybe it was a nightmare, about missing the bus, or missing kick-off. It was a regular thing throughout my career, and it was stressful. And there was times where you would get caught in traffic or whatever, and you were pushing it. But it must run with goalkeepers, because we were in I think it was the first winter break in Spain, and Big Tony Warner, remember him? On loan, big bonus. We were coming back for the training session as he was walking towards. He'd slept in, so it wasn't the best prep for him on loan at Celtic.
Stokesy was the worst for me. Anthony Stokes was just, there was always something with Stokesy. But we went to Australia with Celtic, the pre-season tour in Sydney. Our first game, we're playing in the Olympic Stadium, and it's the first year Lenny, I think Neil had got the job permanent, so everybody's trying to make a good impression. Stokesy, bus sitting outside the hotel. He's not coming, is he? And I think Lenny had had enough of him by this time. Says to the driver, let's go. Left him. Stokesy had to get a taxi to the hotel in Sydney to the Olympic Stadium, and he was benched for that game, but I think he was fined as well. But you're right, there's just repeat offenders, and I'm the same as Piero. It was just a fear factor with some managers. Derek Kenny, you get any trouble? Any stories about lateness from your newspaper days?
I'm just happy I don't get fined for timekeeping myself, Mark. That could be quite difficult at the moment, but no, I think, that's funny, you were talking about players. I remember there was an Effie Ambrose incident, Juventus in the Champions League, and Neil was the manager, and he'd missed the bus for training. And his roommate, I'm trying to recall who his roommate was at the time, but I think Effie got a little bit confused, as unfortunately he often did on the pitch, or still does from time to time. But it was a hell of a game, or the build up to miss a bus, that's for sure.
Yeah, listen, it's I'm sure there's a few other stories that we'll remember once we sit down and have a real think about this. But let's just finish off, guys, with Sunday's game. It's a big one, so we don't want to overlook it. Predictions first and foremost. Piero, predictions for Sunday's score?
I think it'll be an entertaining game. I think obviously Rangers are in a crestway wave at the minute. They're confident. They've obviously wrapped up the league. They're still, in the Europa League going well, so they're going to come with confidence. I could see it. I think Celtic defensively, they've obviously been poor throughout the course of the season, so I struggle to see them keeping a clean sheet. I'd probably go for a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw.
1-1. Sid?
I think there'll be goals in it. Is James Forrest close to?
He must be. He must be close to starting. Come on, at Tannadice.
Interesting to see if he features. I'm going to go 3-2 Celtic.
3-2 Celtic. Derek, what are you thinking? Similar to what Rangers, or how Rangers have performed? Will they have the same mindset of they have in European games and how they approach the game at Celtic Park, or will Celtic finally get that long-awaited win?
I'm thinking along the same lines as Stephen. I'm thinking a 2-2. I mean, I think the Celtic defend. I think Rangers in attack are fluid, they're clinical. And I just don't think the Celtic defence is secure enough to keep them out. Psychologically, it's crucial that Celtic score first, I think. Because I think if Rangers score first, I just don't think Celtic mentally are strong enough at the moment. But I'll go with Stephen. I think a 2-2.
Yeah, 2-2. Well, listen, it'll be interesting. Always is when it comes to Rangers and Celtic games. I think this one is such a big one for Celtic. They all are, but come the end of the season, such disappointment. And the big thing with our supporters and comments coming in to end that invincible run from Rangers, I think would be huge. Guys, that's us. Piero, thanks very much for joining us, mate. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Derek, same to yourself. Thanks very much for joining us once again. Thanks to everybody for listening and watching, and thanks again to our sponsors, First Star Legends Gin, Social Recluse and First Class Transfers. We'll see you all again next week.